Okay, so this is the biology paper from 2022, paper 2, and we're just going to tackle the first question here, which is, the first one is all about sexual reproduction. So, it mentions that there are two types of reproduction, sexual and asexual, and the table there is asking us to say what is true about each of those. So obviously cell division occurs in both. Fertilisation is when one gamete fertilises another gamete, so a sperm and egg, or a pollen cell and an ovum or whatever. So that's obviously only in sexual reproduction. Genes are passed on from parent to offspring. That's the case for both, because you're passing on genes in both of those examples. And offspring are genetically identical to each other. That is when you've got asexual reproduction. In plants, the gametes are not sperm and egg, but pollen in the male and an ovum in the female. So the question says, name the male gamete formed in flowering plants. That's going to be pollen. Okay. Slightly odd graph here that we've got to try and make some sense of. It says cell division by meiosis. So remember, mitosis happens in my toes, meiosis happens in my ovaries. So meiosis is to do with forming gametes. So meiosis forms gametes. So egg cells or sperm cells or pollen or whatever. And the diagram shows the mass of DNA per cell before, during and after meiosis. So it's because what the reason for the shape of this graph is because what happens is all the DNA is doubled, all the chromosomes are replicated, copied, just like in mitosis, where you copy all the DNA and then form two new cells. So that same sort of thing happens. It divides into two, just like in mitosis, but then in meiosis it divides again, so that you end up with a cell which has half the amount of DNA, half the number of chromosomes as you originally started with. So if we think of it in terms of, it's saying mass of DNA per cell in arbitrary units. Let's consider these to be chromosomes. So let's say this is a cell with 4 chromosomes, right? So all this time it has 4 chromosomes. In the human cells, human body cells have 23 chromosomes, but let's assume this is, I don't know, a fly or an earthworm or something with very small numbers of chromosomes. What happens then is that you copy those chromosomes, so you end up with 5, 6, 7, and then 8 chromosomes. And then what happens after that is the cell divides. So 4 of the chromosomes go to each end, and so then you've got 4 chromosomes per cell. Then it divides again, so you end up with 2 chromosomes per cell. Okay, so then you've got the gametes here. So it's sort of a strange graph, but just want to try and make some sense of that. And the whole process takes a number of hours. So the question says, when is the DNA in the chromosomes being copied? So the first stage in the cell cycle is for all of the DNA to be replicated. So we've started with 4 chromosomes, we need to double it to 8. So it's between here and here, which, if you look at the units on the bottom, is between 3 and 4 hours. So between 3 and 4 hours. Let's keep flicking back to the graph, but cells divide twice during meiosis. Which 2 times in figure 1 show one cell dividing into 2 cells? So this is one division here, and this is another division here. So this is 5 hours, and this one happens at 6 hours. So we need to tick 5 hours and 6 hours. What is the mean mass of DNA in arbitrary units in a sperm cell? So for this animal, producing its sperm cells, the gametes, the mass of DNA in those is of course 2. Right? Because you started with a normal body cell, you replicated the DNA, then divided again to form a gamete, which you end up with 2 chromosomes in each gamete. And of course, when those 2 gametes join, when the male gamete joins the female gamete, 2 chromosomes from each one will form 4, and so then the new animal that's formed will have 4 chromosomes altogether, or a mass of 4. What is the mean mass of DNA in arbitrary units in each cell in an embryo? So after fertilisation has happened, it's obviously going to be 4. Okay. Kind of a strange graph, but hopefully makes sense of that to answer that question.